Good morning, everyone. Just for context, I'm recording this assembly on Thursday evening and will be releasing it on Friday morning in time for our normal slot at 8:30. I hope you've all had a great week and have enjoyed the stunning weather as much as you have been able to during your daily authorised exercise. At least the sunshine means that we are all actually able to get outside when we do exercise, be it at a walk or at a run. Now, most of you will probably have read George Orwell's 1984, written in 1948, in which he imagines everyone in his dystopian vision of the future having to do a daily state-mandated exercise routine. When the protagonist's mind drifts, the instructor on the other end of the screen pulls him back into line. It does feel eerily prescient, though Joe Wicks doesn't tell you off for not trying hard enough. Yet. Anyway, I thought I'd talk this week about crying. Yesterday evening I was listening to some old music on YouTube, which is how I now consume a fair bit of the music I listen to. I started with some upbeat favourites that I grew up with, but YouTube's algorithm soon kicked in and started playing some other songs that it thought I might like. The computer taking away my thought process, another dystopian vision of the future becoming a reality, perhaps. I didn't mind though. I found that YouTube's algorithm is brilliant at predicting my mood and playing me a song that I really would like to hear. And then I started crying. Now I'll bet that the overwhelming majority of the students listening to this assembly don't know who James Taylor is and have never heard the song Fire and Rain, but it is one that almost instantly starts me crying. It's a song written by Taylor about the death of a close friend and about his own struggles with addiction. It's a song filled with pathos. Now, pathos is a great word. It comes from the Greek word for suffering, and we use it now to talk about a quality that evokes pity or sadness. Fire and Rain talks about lonely times when I could not find a friend, and it always brings me to tears. I then started thinking about why we cry, what makes us cry, and then I read a brilliant article in Time magazine about the science behind crying. It turns out that there is an awful lot that we just do not know about crying and why we do it. Charles Darwin wrote his third book, called The Expression of Emotions in Man and Animals, in 1872. He reckoned there were only 3 reasons why we cry. 1 was to lubricate the eye's surface, 2 was to keep our nostrils damp, and 3 was to wash out particles of dust. Weeping, Darwin felt, was purposeless. Now, Darwin was writing in 1872, the height of the Victorian era, when weeping was surely seen as unmanly and something which shouldn't happen if you were just able to pull yourself together. Hopefully, we've moved on a little. Maybe not that much, though. In the 1980s, there was a relatively popular view that crying removed toxic substances from the blood that build up during times of stress. It was a biochemical reaction. When we look at the entirety of the animal kingdom, humans are the only creatures who can cry as a result of how they are feeling. Some other species shed tears as a result of pain or irritation, but it is only humans who do so because they're sad or because of some other emotion. We've mostly moved away from viewing emotional tears, weeping, as having a biological or chemical point. Instead, research now views tears as having some social purpose. There is a theory that tears trigger a social connection with others in your family or community. And research has shown that emotional tears are actually chemically different from the tears we cry when we're chopping onions, for example. Emotional tears contain more protein, and that could be to make those tears run down your face more slowly so that they can be seen by others and others can then respond to your tears. When you see someone who is emotional, then it triggers the same areas of your brain as if you were experiencing those emotions yourself. It could well be that, simply put, we cry to show others we are sad. Now, I'm not sure about that. It seems to me that it implies that there is a degree of manipulation to our crying, be that conscious or unconscious. If the theory is right, then why do people still cry when they're alone? Why can the same songs or films bring people to tears over and over again? It strikes me that the theory that crying as being driven by a need to outwardly show people you're sad, whilst compelling, doesn't answer all of the questions. Clearly, there is more research to be done. I now want you to think about how we view tears as a society. Darwin had that buttoned up Victorian view about tears and crying, purposeless, unmanly and so on. However, has that view changed? Is crying still viewed as weakness? Think about the language that is often used about crying. We say they broke down in tears. Broke down. Broke. Broke from the perfect ideal that we shouldn't need to cry. That crying is in fact a sign that something is broken. Often we'll hear the phrase, cried like a baby. So when one cries, there either is something broken in you, or you haven't actually grown up and are still a baby. Crying is often described as a loss of control. Take this section from Sylvia Plath's novel, The Bell Jar. I didn't know why I was going to cry, but I knew that if anybody spoke to me or looked at me too closely, the tears would fly out of my eyes and the sobs would fly out of my throat and I'd cry for a week. I could feel the tears brimming and sloshing in me like water in a glass that is unsteady and too full. Confusingly though, there are times when society views not crying as showing that you are a bit of an emotionless robot. Take the Queen for example. The Queen is not a big crier. If you look back through the records, the first time she's recorded as crying in public is at the decommissioning of the Royal Yacht Britannia in 1997. Now the Netflix series The Crown invents a storyline whereby the Queen doesn't cry when visiting the site of the Aberfan mining disaster where 116 children and 28 adults lost their lives. That storyline has traction with the audience because it plays on what some people might think about our monarch, that she's too buttoned up, too Victorian perhaps, and that her not crying is a sign that she is a bit emotionless. It seems then that there is a balance to be struck, in societal terms at least, as to when we should and when we should not cry. What the science seems to indicate is that it is good to be able to cry. Some research indicates that people who don't or can't cry describe themselves as having less connected relationships, less empathy, and more negative, aggressive feelings than those people who can or do cry. We seem to think, as a society, that crying is an emotional detox, and have done for some time. Aristotle wrote that crying cleanses the mind, and it may be that there is some truth in that statement. To be truly happy, perhaps we need to know what true sadness feels like. I quite like a good cry, and after I heard Fire and Rain last night, I went on to listen to other songs that will set me off. I wasn't feeling sad, down or depressed, but I just quite liked tapping into that wobbly emotional state and recognising it for what it was. I listened to Bruce Springsteen's The River and to David Gray's This Year's Love, and I felt, perhaps paradoxically, quite warm and happy before bed, and I slept really well. I also have a number of films that will always bring me to tears. I cannot watch Chariots of Fire without blubbing, and always at the same point of the film, when Eric Liddell runs the 400-metre final and Vangelis' score starts plucking at the heartstrings. Les Miserables gets me every time. The song On My Own and later Eponine's death. And that's it. I'm crying away. Perhaps somewhat strangely, Toy Story 3 is guaranteed to make me cry. You know the scene towards the end where the toys are moving towards the furnace and looking at each other and they hold hands and resign themselves to their end? That's all it takes. I'm gone. There's quite a lot in and around the world at the moment that might make you want to cry. If you do, then the science and societal expectation would seem to indicate that it is the right thing to do. Cry away, and hopefully you'll feel a little bit better. Now, I genuinely started this assembly because of Fire and Rain and my hearing a song that made me well up when I listened to it last night. However, about 2/3 of the way through my writing this assembly, I heard that my uncle, who's only 10 years older than me and someone I grew up alongside, died in hospital this morning of COVID-19. I stopped writing and I cried, and I'm sure I'll cry again. It will help, and it will provide the catharsis that I need right now. If you need a cathartic experience, then don't feel ashamed or sad. Crying is just fine. Perhaps a little selfishly, the prayer I'll give today will, as a result of the sad news I had today, be a variation of the prayer for the dead. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls, and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen. I hope that you and all of your families are well, and that you stay well. You are all very much in my thoughts and in my prayers. Have a good weekend.